back, everyone, to Diversitas, a show at the intersection of diversity, business, and culture. My name is Michael Bowman, and today we have as our special guest Jarel Daniels. Mr. Daniels is principal of JD Tax and Accounting, and I wanted to talk to Jarel for a number of reasons. Number one, he is really at the center of trying to help medium-sized businesses, particularly diverse medium-sized businesses, to grow. So that's the first piece. And the second is he has really been engaged in this, all of the myriad issues that come with the funding, the COVID funding that a lot of businesses have been receiving, and a lot of the hoops that they've been going through, and wanted to talk to him about that process, what his experience has been in that process, and maybe how he can help others that listen to this show or watch this show. So with all of that, I want to welcome Jarel Daniels. Jarel, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. I appreciate the introduction.
So for those of you who are uninitiated, apparently I'm getting old. And so we have a number of friends and colleagues who, rather than call me Mike, they call me Mr. Bowman. And as much as I try to get them out of it, I guess they just see this old gray, craggy looking dude and they have to call him Mr., which I understand. But thanks for coming, Jarel. I wanted to kind of get into it. First of all, why don't you tell the audience, like, what's your background? How did you get into this whole accounting thing to begin with?
Yeah, sure. So my background, my bachelor's degree is in accounting. After Westchester, where I graduated from, I started SCI, I was dealing with hedge funds. That's when the market was on a downturn. So the accounting jobs wasn't as plentiful. So I started working in hedge funds, and then probably about, I want to say a year, when I started my master's program in tax, that's when I moved into public accounting. So I worked in public accounting for about, let's say, 8 years. And personally, man, I got to a point where I got sick of it.
What is public accounting for those who don't know what it is?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to break it down is when you think of the stock market and those financial reports that come up from publicly traded companies, public accounting firms are the firms who give the consumer assurance. So that's why they call it audit, or assurance that, hey, these financial reports that you're looking at are correct. We did our due diligence, we did our control testing. What you're looking at is an accurate depiction of what their financials are. So since you have that, this should give you cause to invest. Without that, and then if you kind of think back, I think believing like between like 04 and 06 when everything happened with Enron.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what public accounting is. Kind of that's public accounting firms.
So you did that for 8 years, you say?
Yeah, so I did that for about 8 years. Yeah.
And then what happened?
So yeah, I got sick of it. For anybody who's not familiar with public accounting firms, especially during tax season, but whether you're in tax and audit, you work a high amount of hours. I mean, during tax season, I had it range from anywhere, especially during the peak, anywhere between 80 to 90 hours a week. So as you go on year after year after year, I got a feeling of being burnt out, fatigue. And my brother passed, so that was kind of a spark for me to say, hey, let me try something different. So I actually ended up going into recruitment, which is totally left field. You know, being an accountant that's at that time was, in a cubicle, right? And I had limited contact with clients, to, being a recruiter now, making 100 cold calls a day, really having to have conversations with the C-suite, CEO, CFO to figure out what kind of workforce that they needed, for their company to embody their culture, their brand. So that transition in itself, to this day, I think was probably one of the most important experiences that I've been through.
You got your business development game up.
Yeah, for sure. And if, as we talk about the company or the firm, JD Tax and Accounting, I can kind of bring that full circle in regards to, how I think that experience kind of gives us our edge in regards to what we offer.
When did you start JD Tax and Accounting?
Ooh, man. So I started JD Tax and Accounting. So I started JD Tax and Accounting when I was in public.
Okay.
So, it started as a side gig.
Okay.
Doing some taxes on the side. Um, I didn't get serious about JD Tax and Accounting probably up to about 4 years ago, 3, 4 years ago. And I was still kind of, 50-50. The last position that I took at KMS, I was 50-50. And then on my birthday, actually, I gave him my resignation letter and I said, you know what, win, lose, or draw, I'm gonna go about this, full throttle, and I'm gonna live with the results. So I think, for me, and I think for many entrepreneurs, when you go from working at a job where you have, a solid paycheck or that just a recurring paycheck, you get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, stepping away from it and, being solely responsible for how your money comes in, it's a scary thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely not for the faint-hearted. So yeah, I went through this transition where I was like halfway in, halfway out. But yeah, I think about 3 years ago is when I got really serious, and I said, this is going to be the main thing.
And so, because when you stepped out, I'm assuming you already had some kind of a main stable of clients that you could help, you could service.
Yeah, so I already had a small book of business, enough to say that I can build off this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the real thing for me was, so when I started, it was just, okay, this is some good money to make during tax season. And I think the real issue for me was, what do I do after tax season? Or how do I provide value after tax season? And when things kind of clicked for me, when I realized the value of bookkeeping and how many small business owners do not know their numbers, and things that really came as a formality from, the environment that I came from, being corporate America, small business owners, they didn't have a clue. So once I realized that, hey, not only can I do the taxes, but I can offer a service that is really year round, then that's when I start really feeling comfortable about, hey, I can step out and I can do my own thing.
So let's dive into that a little bit. When you started thinking about what kind of service you could provide, what made you, what was it about your experience that made you say, there are a lot of small businesses that don't have a professional doing, this particular suite of services? What was it in your experience that made you kind of come to that realization?
Everything's stemmed from the taxes, because as a person that's doing their taxes, as their accountant resource, throughout the year, they would ask questions, they would have concerns. Hey, what am I supposed to do when I'm paying somebody on the books? What kind of reports do I, what kind of tax reports during the year do I have to submit? How do I know if I'm making a profit? How do I know if I'm showing the loss? So it was those questions that kind of sparked. Doing taxes is just not enough.
Right.
It was so really just being open to what clients were saying, and asking, and their concerns. That's how accounting and the bookkeeping service really expanded, because just hearing them ask for it, I knew that they needed it.
Right. So how many clients are you servicing right now, providing those services to?
So right now we have about 55 accounting clients. All accounting clients receive bookkeeping services, but then that expands a little bit more for clients, depending on their need, to budgeting and forecasting, which is more proactive. We think of bookkeeping as being, reactive. You're going to do whatever you do throughout the month. We're going to report back to you and try to provide some context to those, to those numbers. The budgeting and the forecast is more proactive. Hey, what are your financial goals? What do you want your profit margin to be? Right? How can we cut costs throughout the year? How can we make sure that you're on pace for profit? And then the last step is just business planning. And, that really kind of goes into, their marketing and sales funnel, how they get leads, prospect, and sales, and how, they go about that overall process.
So it's interesting because, you're really providing kind of CFO services, but then you're starting to kind of go into more of the business development side of it as well.
Because with a lot of small business clients, especially when you talk about minority businesses, brown and Black businesses, what I found is a good amount of business owners know how to work hard. Right? To a degree, working hard is easy, but what they don't know how to do is they don't know how to transition from working hard to working smart. Mm-hmm. And business is competitive. So, oftentimes, myself included, when I, first started business, I would work hard and ask myself, why am I not getting to where I think I should be? Mm-hmm. Right. And that's usually where the frustration, creeps in. So, once again, I can provide, financial statements to clients. I can let them know, where to cut costs and, give them reminders or check-ins to say, hey, we set this goal at the beginning of the year and you're not on pace to get there. But even with those things said, if I don't give them an action plan on how to get to A and B, if they're stuck, then, it's a ceiling to my value. Mm-hmm. And, what I've seen in the business development is where, in any, business proposition, if whatever you charge on the back end, and we talked about this on the back end, if you could say, hey, I charged you this, but you made X, Y, Z. Right. Right. And there's a gap, and that's what value is. And whatever there's value, usually it's a deal to be made. So, that's that business development piece, is really where I feel like we separate ourselves, from other accounting firms in the Philadelphia area. And we really try to grow with our clients. We have a goal that, we really want, 100 minority businesses making at least $1 million, top line. That's our goal. I think, when we have, a client base, that has that type of activity, we'll be in a good spot, not only us, but for our clients. And I think, I know that we're not going to get to that point by just prospecting.
Let me ask you this. What is the typical JD tax and accounting client look like right now?
So most of our clients fall into two categories: professional service or in real estate. The majority of our clients do some type of service. What I say is the real estate. We don't deal too much in, with resale businesses where you have to keep an inventory. And not that, we are against it, but I think that the first and foremost, to have that type of business operation, you can't go into that type of business operation blindly. Like, you really need, some type of experience to really deal with supply chain. Mm-hmm. Like I said, most, small business owners or people that's new to being an entrepreneur, that's a area of their business in itself that, they need to, figure out and, focus on how to, maintain.
So let me ask you this. Are all of your clients diverse clients, or what's the breakdown?
No. So, that's a great question. I would want to say about 70 to 75% of our clients are diverse clients. Okay. The rest, I would say about 75%. I would say 75%.
And of that 75% of diverse clients, are all of them providing services as opposed to goods?
Most are providing services. Okay. So, especially when you think of, the daycare providers, the hair salons, home care agencies,
Right.
Other consultants, right? That's really our bread and our butter. And then, the other 25% or our other client base, can vary. We have 3 restaurants, but we're not heavy in the restaurant industry for some reasons.
That's a tough business.
Yeah, that's a tough business, man. So and because we try to do business development for our clients, we can't take on too many clients in a specific industry.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you have to be okay. So do you do more than one client in an industry?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like for example, I know, and I have a list of at least 1,077 home care agencies registered in Philadelphia. Right. So there's no way that we can service, any more than about 30 home care agencies. Right. Just because that, like I said, at the back end of our service is the business development. We're trying to increase not only just the top line, but the bottom line as well. And, and business is competitive. So if you're trying to tell every home care agency or every barbershop or every hair salon, the same thing, you're not really giving anybody a competitive advantage.
Right. So that's interesting. So I was thinking that you would provide the business development stuff more to companies that are providing services to other businesses, and in other words, business to business type entities. But it sounds like you're also providing that service to certain businesses that are kind of going to the general consumer. Is that accurate?
100%.
And so what's the difference in terms of the kind of advice generally speaking, the kind of advice you're providing to the business to business focused client as opposed to the consumer focused client?
It's a great question.
All of them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I think the advice that I would give, to a B2B or a B2C. So for a B2C, you're dealing with a lot more volume. And not only that, we live in a social media, era where not only do you need to engage, but you need to entertain. So, your marketing strategy has to be much different than a B2B company because there are much less prospects. And usually in B2B, the engagement is a lot more professional. And you really have to, they say dot your I's, cross your T's in regards to, proposal and engagement. So I think that for lack of better words, you have to level up when you're talking about B2B, just because, like I said, it's more formal. Both parties are probably a lot more educated in the process, and there are fewer prospects in the B2B versus B2C. Like I said, you not only have to engage, but you have to entertain, and you're dealing with a much larger population.
So, in terms of the diverse businesses that you provide services to, because you provide services to so many, can you kind of speak to business issues that are common to diverse businesses that you've experienced as you've helped them along their path?
Common specifically to diverse business owners?
Yeah.
Okay. I think definitely a lack of understanding in regards to taxes and acquiring capital. From a standpoint of so normally what happens, you have this business owner, let's say they make some money, right? they'll come and say, hey, this is, my business activity. I had X, Y, and Z deductions. That asks a bunch of questions of things can they write off? Like, hey, I took my girl on vacation, but we walked past a seminar. Like they'll say something crazy.
Right.
And all because they don't want to pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Which I understand. Like nobody,
nobody wants to pay taxes. Right.
Nobody wants to pay taxes. On the flip side, though, that business owner will come, a year later. Hey man, I really want to buy a house because maybe what they see they can afford it, right? But what happens is because you didn't want to show income, and because as a minority, as a black and brown, they already, and I hope I say this right, as a minority, black and brown, when you walk into a bank, they're already a little hesitant to give you something. Mm-hmm. So the paper trail is really all that they have. Mm-hmm. And the first issue, with many minority businesses, that we work with, that's a common theme, is really trying to, lock in that concept of you have to pay taxes because a bank, the concept is simple. You're not going to pay tax on money you didn't earn, right? And the underwriter at the bank is always going to ask for your tax return to substantiate your income. So I always kind of break it down like you can either play the long game or the short game. Mm-hmm. You can play the long game in regards to you can file your return and you can claim, no profit, and year after year after year, maybe you have some cash, you didn't blow it all, but now because maybe you want to hit that next level of your business, maybe you want to get a brick and mortar, maybe you want to, expand your operation. Maybe you need 100 grand, 150 or 200 grand to do that. But because you don't have any, what I call money on the books, maybe you have to wait 5-10 years to do that because maybe you only can retain 10 grand this year, 20 grand. So it's a while before you can get to that point. Or do you pay taxes now? And then, 2-3 years, you can go to a bank and you can ask for some capital because you have the paper trail to prove it.
That's interesting. What's interesting about that is I would agree with you that small businesses and entrepreneurs, number one, they want to pay the least amount of taxes as they possibly can. But at the same time, paying your taxes is essentially kind of the cost of the ticket to the extent that you want to create a track record to show financing, financing entities, banks, etc., that you are creditworthy, right? So you have to do it. It's like if you don't do it, you really can't grow the way you would want to grow unless you just have like a mountain of cash that you're sitting on. And if you have a mountain of cash that you're sitting on, then you need to be paying taxes on that cash because Uncle Sam's going to come after you anyway.
And unfortunately, he's coming over these next few years. He's coming for sure. So even in the coffee talk, my weekly email that I sent out on Monday, I referenced a tax court case regarding the Uber driver. Didn't keep track of any of his receipts, no bookkeeping, no nothing. And he ended up having to pay over $100,000 in taxes and fees. So, yeah, I think
that wasn't for 1 year. That must have been over several years, right?
So just to give you the snapshot of it. So he had a 1099 from Uber in 2015 for $500,000.
Oh!
But what happened is he had multiple friends and family working under his Uber account. So most Uber drivers, after you take away, the expenses and, the tax deduction for mileage, let's say make 20 cents on the dollar, 20 to 25 cents on the dollar. So even at 100 grand, he should have been paying tax on even at $500,000 of top line, he should only been paying tax on $125,000 in income. But what happened is he didn't have anything. And usually what I try to warn people is like, people think that they file a tax return and it get accepted. Anything like they're in the clear. But with that tax court case, the opinion was rendered in June, this June. But it was retaining the 2015 tax return. So it's like, I'm sorry, 2018 tax return. So it's this window that the IRS has that, once again, that sometimes people are oblivious to. And, he has one of the issues with, minority, businesses, on the back end, if, they were subject to an audit, they don't keep track of anything. Mm-hmm. Right. It's no, organization. So if they do need to prove or substantiate an expense, because the burden of proof is always going to be on the taxpayer, they have nothing to show for it.
Shouldn't it all at this point, like the way we transact business, etc., it's all like in the bank account statements at this point, ain't it? Like everything you do is basically in your bank account statement.
Yeah. And that's why it's scary, because I mean, you can only imagine, I can just look at, somebody's bank statements and, maybe the end of the year balance may be only $1,000, but each month y'all have $15,000 of deposits that came through. Yeah. Right. So it's like, yeah, it's not a hard reach, right? To figure out like, oh, wait a minute.
Right.
So, but I think minority businesses turning a blind eye to that. I think that's a major problem in itself.
Most of your clients, are they like super established, or are they more like startups? Like what's the kind of,
I think it's probably, let's say it can be anywhere from the 1 to 5 year range. For majority of my clients.
So if I'm starting a business from scratch today, and I want to retain you to help me along the path, what's the initial advice you're giving to me as my accounting guru so that I stay out of trouble?
So this is just be being honest. The initial advice that I'm giving you is make sure it makes sense. Entrepreneurship is popular right now. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Most articles that I've been reading has been tagging the Great Resignation as the theme, as it's a lot harder for people to find workers. Mm-hmm. But the problem with, and this is just really a personal opinion, but I stand on it. The problem with whether you come right out of school or you have no school and try to jump in right into entrepreneurship is you don't have any model to go off of. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that I think me and my team are able to offer value is because we all worked in a corporate environment before. We all started as the low man, of the totem pole, when, working with different businesses, we was able to see what we like, what we don't like, how, different managers or different partners, interacted with clients. So we was able to, to pick and grab, things that we like. And, as we, came together to start a business, kind of, put all that together into what we want our brand to be. Passion, profit, knowledge. That's the, the three things that I make sure that, not make sure, but I try to make clients understand and new business owners understand that, those are pillars, to establishing a business. Passion, because one of the things that I love is like when I hear people say, I'm gonna go into business for myself so I can have all the time in the world. And it's just like, the fact is you have more control over your time.
Right.
100%.
Yes.
But the thing that you have more time is complete nonsense.
You do not have more time.
Less of it.
You do not have
a lot less of it.
Right.
So, and the passion part is, after you've done your 8 hours and you got to put in another 4, 5, 6, depending on, wherever you are in your business, it's going to have to be something that drives you a little bit. Whether, you know, it's passion, you know, within that project, whether it's passion from your ego. And what I mean by that is I like business from a standpoint that it usually, in my experience, entrepreneurship usually attracts the people who have an ego for wanting to be valued for something. Mm-hmm. Right. So just like me being an accountant, I'm passionate about that because people view me as a resource. Right? Mm-hmm. People view you, you know, for, you know, good counsel. Right. Mm-hmm. Hey, when I talk to Mr. Bowman, he knows what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. That should provide you some ego. That should provide you some sense of worth, I think, you know, entrepreneurs, you know, need to be able to find that within their business. Profit, I mean, that's easy. I mean, if you work in a job, if you're about to leave your job, and let's say your job makes $75,000, and you're about to start a business, and you do your business plan, you map it out, and that business say makes $40,000, right, a year. You got to ask yourself, is it really worth it, or can you keep this as a hobby? The reason why is all the things that we just talked about. When it gets hard, and you think like, damn, I only make 40 grand doing this. But if I can go back out into the workforce, I can make an extra 30. Is it worth it? Those thoughts starting to creep in. Right. So I think, you know, even if it's not immediate profit, in the long term, next 2 to 3 years, you should know with confidence that, hey, if I do this right, I'll be better off financially, or at least I'll be at the same point. But I think anything less than that.
What about knowledge?
Yeah, knowledge, man. I think, you know, especially, you know, most of the business that I work with are service. So we're not reselling a product. You know, you're really selling your time and, you know, your expertise. So when you're a consultant, people come to you for advice. So if you're not on top of your game, whether it be in accounting, whether it be in tax, whether if you're a salon owner and you don't know about the different, you know, products that are coming out for, you know, clients' hair, mm-hmm. People are looking for you for the answers because they look at you as a professional. Like they already assume you know it. And when you don't know it, you talk about business being competitive. I think you just open yourself up, you know, to not only lose clients, to lose credibility to other competitors who do know what they're talking about and, you know, exude that confidence, you know, when they talk and, you know, when they're out in public or whether it be media sources.
Speaking of expertise, so you developed an expertise in this whole PPP thing. Tell me about that. First of all,
for the nightmares, man. But go ahead.
For the uninitiated, what is that PPP?
Yeah, so the Paycheck Protection Program. So when everything happened with COVID, people couldn't go back to work. When you think about the economy, GDP, you know, buying and selling products, people not working, you know, that all plays a factor into it. So, you know, the PPP, the EIDL, both programs that came from the SBA was to really incentivize, you know, that spending, you know, while everything was down. So, you know, all small business owners, let me say not small, because definitely some corporations got right. Small. Right. But all business owners or businesses were entitled to it, right? And, you know, it really centered around, what's the best way to put this? So the Paycheck Protection Program centered around payroll, whether it be for your staff or for a single member LLC, how much you paid yourself in payroll. And, you know, that was defined by really, you know, whatever you pay self-employment tax on. So, you know, once again, you know, talking about minorities and, you know, Black and brown businesses, a lot of businesses shot themselves in the foot because what happened was everything happened in March 2020. So they said, all right, well, show us that you were in business in 2019, right? And we'll give you some money. We'll go off your 2019 or your 2020 if you can show that you started before COVID. Right. But maybe they were in business, they never reported it. Right. And, the award amount, especially for, a small business owner, single member, strictly went off a number off your tax return. Right. So if you didn't have that number on your tax return, then.
What if you had 1099s and not W-2s?
Well, even with the 1099s, you have to report that on Schedule C.
Right.
So
but you still get that credit though for PPP.
Say that one more time.
You still get credit for the 1099.
Yeah. So as long as you have a Schedule C, whether you be an LLC or a sole proprietor, right? You didn't even have to have a formal business structure. As long as it was on that Schedule C, because whatever income is on that Schedule C is subject to self-employment tax, which is equivalent to Medicare and Social Security. So if you pay Social Security and Medicare for your employees, or if you pay that for yourself via the self-employment tax, you were entitled to it.
Got it.
So like I said, a lot of small business owners, minority, Black and brown businesses, because maybe they didn't want to report income on their tax returns, but let's say they've been in business 3-4 years, they were not able to receive the PPP, and that was free money. I often joke when I was doing the weekly updates, like, hey, when you hear PPP, that's free money. Like, hop on it. Oh, that was like
those were grants, right? I'm sorry, those were loans. Those weren't grants, right?
So the PPP was a forgivable loan. So, as long as you apply for it, you received it, and then you apply for forgiveness. And the forgiveness application was just a matter of certifying that you spent the money for business purposes. Then it was completely forgiven. But then, so you had the PPP, which, so you needed tax returns to receive that money. And then you had the economic injury disaster loan, which was a loan that basically awarded you 50% of what your gross revenue was. So this is conceptually how I framed it in my mind. So whenever you think of gross income, you think of GDP, all businesses, gross income kind of goes in that GDP number. The economy was down, right? So let's say about 4 to 6 months. So basically the government said, hey, whatever your gross revenue is, because you were out of business 4 to 6 months, we're going to give you a loan for half of that amount.
For your top line number.
For your top line number, right? But it's a loan. But it's a 30-year loan.
Right.
3.75% interest rate. Super sweet loan, but it's a loan. I mean, no mistake about it. You can't get it forgiven, so on and so forth. So, once again, business owners, was entitled, to the EIDL. So those were the two programs that, were really popular and really helped a lot of businesses kind of make their way through the storm of COVID. And, if I'm just being frank, even my own business kind of, really took us to the next level.
Mm-hmm. So, we're coming out. I mean, we're still in COVID, I guess. We are still in COVID, but the world is figuring out a way to kind of move forward. What do you see for the clients that you have as the challenges that are coming out of, that exist coming out of this, the COVID era that we find ourselves
in? Yeah. Definitely, definitely finding workers. I think, that's going to be an issue for small businesses, simply because, you can't, just increase, the hourly wage like a Walmart, or I think Walmart is paying cashiers like $18, $19 an hour now.
Mm-hmm.
So, unlike, a big company where you can increase that price and have that cost rolled down to the consumer in regards to your pricing, it's a lot harder for a small business owner to do that. So I think, employment is definitely going to be one. But my big thing to all my clients, man, is that the price is going up.
Inflation.
That's my theme. Price is going up. So just like that example that I just gave, a company like Walmart, they can increase wages, and on the back end, you know, consumers are going to feel that, right? If you're a business, or even if you're an employee, and let's say you're making, you know, 50,000, and cost of living is 3.5%, but inflation rose 6%, right? That means your dollar is less.
Right.
So, you know, business owners, you know, and it's definitely a hot topic for small business owners, to say the least, in regards to modifying their pricing, and, you know, making sure that, you know, their pricing, you know, reflects like their current economic situation.
Right.
You know, one of the things that, you know, I tell like clients, because they always wonder, well, if it's a revolving pricing, when do I increase the pricing? How do I know if it's the right time? And I usually say, like, business will tell you if it's the right time. You know, supply and demand, like, especially if you're in the service business. If you find that you don't have any time left when you're scheduled to take on any new clients, time barely
I
with your
was just
client,
thinking about that actually.
right? That's a huge red flag that, hey, I need to increase my price, because obviously my supply in regards to my time is limited. I don't have any.
Give yourself a raise, essentially. You
Right.
give yourself a raise. In the service business, you the time that you have is limited. You
Yeah.
don't have an infinite, it's not like a widget.
Yeah.
You don't have an infinite, you know, supply of time. So in order to increase your revenue, you're going to have to increase your rates.
You have to. And, you know, I think the beauty in regards to, you know, my profession is, you know, because, you know, I attack it from a business development standpoint, even my clients on the back end, they see my pricing increasing. I'm hopeful that without even having to talk to me, they're comfortable, you know, paying an increase simply because they can say, hey, you know, Jarel helped me save, you know, $10,000 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Or hey, you know, when I got started with, you know, JD Tax and Accounting, I didn't know what my business was doing, and now, you know, I'm at this level. That's the, you know, the end result that, you know, we hope to hear, you know, that substantiate our price. And I think that for any, you know, small business owner, that's the confidence that you need, you know, to feel comfortable in it. And, you know, that confidence will really, you know, going back to that knowledge piece, and really, you know, having a good understanding of, you know, your craft, and, you know, how you provide value, even, you know, how your competitors provide the same value, so you can know, you know, how you stand apart. You know, I think it's key, you know, for businesses, as, you know, they, whether they increase their price, you know, they restructure their price, or maybe they don't need as much time on a project.
Right.
But, you know, it's something that has to be figured out. One of the, you know, the test that I usually give clients, the client says to me, hey, I want to make, you know, $500,000 this year. And if it's reasonable, you know, we go through this exercise. I say, all right, well, $500,000, if you was working at a full-time job, that's $250 an hour. When you think of, usually the first kind of task you can outsource is administrative.
Mm-hmm.
So next time you sit at your desk, or, you know, wherever you do work, and let's say you're just going through emails, or you're responding back to phone calls, see how much time that takes you on a weekly basis, right? If that's 5 hours, that's $12.50 a week,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just ask yourself, for that $12.50 a week, could you find somebody, right, and pay, and to do exactly what you, even if it's not as perfect as you, if you was,
Right.
but
Right.
let's say 80% as efficient as you do it, and pay them a lot less. I think, you know, most entrepreneurs, you know, just knowing the kind of the market for, you know, administrative help, will say, yes, I can find somebody. And I think the beauty in that is that, and where we're trying to get to in business, and where we're trying to help our clients get to, is, you know, you're providing opportunities for somebody else. And I think, yeah, you know, like, you don't have to do everything. And by
Right.
not doing everything, you're helping somebody else as they help you. It's a win-win situation.
When I do, and you know, this dovetails nicely into the whole point of Diversitas. You know, what I try to tell You know, when I'm lobbying to majority companies to up their diversity spend or whatever, one of the things I say to them repeatedly is that when you provide this diverse company with an opportunity, you're providing a diverse workforce with an opportunity. Because generally speaking, that diverse company is going to hire some diverse people. And so at the end of the day, that's really what we're talking about. That's really what this is about. And so to the extent that you can do it. Now, the company, the diverse company, to your point, has to come to some realization that they can't, that they need more help. They need to hire people, right? Which is it's not, we can just like talk about it like how hire people, but then
Yeah.
and I know that that's a commitment, right? That's a resource commitment, that's a time commitment, and a lot of people who are they're doing okay, but they could be doing much better, with some help, um, get frightened of that investment, right?
Yeah.
So, what do you tell those people?
Where do you want to be? I think if you want to, honestly, if you want to operate a business that, let's say, is under the $250,000 and, you're fine with that, then in all honesty, you probably don't have to, expand your business and, get a legit workforce. But most people, especially, when you talk about their business, their idea is something that, they hold close to their heart. They want to see it grow to its potential. And when clients tell me that, I'm blunt with them in regards to saying that, I love what I do to an extent that I am assertive, with clients, not aggressive, but I am assertive. Right. You tell me something, I'm gonna hold you to it. So if you want a business that's over $250,000 and you want to, be able always say, I want to retire when I'm 40, I want to retire when I'm 45, then it's certain things that you're going to have to be prepared for, because I can just gonna tell you straight, it's no one man shop making over $1 million. Like it's just not happening. Like you need systems, software, you need workforce to be able to handle that much activity. That means somebody or a group of people is paying you $1 million. It's demands that come with that in business. So I think that would be my feedback to somebody that says like, hey, how do I know if I really need that or if I want that? It really depends on your goals. Because the one thing about business or just work period, and I feel like I'm talking to I talk to a lot of young people about this, regardless of what you want to do, it's going to be a bunch of things within that you hate doing.
Yes.
Like regardless, like that's find me a profession that somebody can say, oh no, I love not only just even whether it be sports, anything. Oh, I love practice. Oh, I love, like it's just certain things, especially if you want to be great at something that you just want to have to, you're going to have to push through.
Jarel Daniels, JD Tax and Accounting. We appreciate you coming on to talk to us today with Diversitas. We appreciate what you're doing on a day-to-day basis because really, man, we're all in business and that kind of stuff, but the work that you're doing is really, 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 really important work as we continue to advocate for diverse businesses to grow their capacity, to grow their capability. You got to have good professionals. You got to have a good accountant. You got to have a good accountant. So we appreciate your time, my friend.
Mr. Bowman, thanks for having me. I only say Mr. Bowman out of respect. I know.
I hear you. No, I
didn't know it in the beginning of the podcast.
Call me Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, so it's out of respect, man. But I appreciate you having me.
All right, man. You take care.
All right, man. Peace.
And to our audience, thanks again for joining us at Diversitas. We look forward to having the conversation and keeping it going. Take care.